Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Doug, the Retirement Guy. We have a breakdown of a Patreon support phone call that I went through and really come down to is going all in on NEO's QQQI. Can it actually replace a paycheck for someone who's 56 years old and losing their job? Well, we're going to break this all down. We had a very long, couple 2-hour conversation with the gentleman, going through all of his options, how things work, and we're going to break it all down for you to just show you how going into one particular fund sounds great, but really is it the right thing to do? Let's get into today's video. Before we do, we got to give you the important disclaimer. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice, and past performances do not guarantee future results. So this was a real viewer's case, and basically come down to is he has $585,000 in his 401k. He wants to replace his paycheck, and he's at 56 years old. And the reason for it is his company is doing a big, massive shutdown. They're closing off areas and they're doing some restructuring, limiting a lot of jobs. So he's watched the channel for many times. He supports us on Patreon, and he just finally says, I need to talk to you. He went through everything with me, explained it all. I asked a bunch of questions. And what he was, and I let him tell me up front, what he wants to do is go 100% of his portfolio into QQQI so that he can basically live off of that income and not have to go look for another job. He's 56 years old, and how can I create income without making one fund carry the entire retirement is what really is the question that we have to ask. So let's start off with the starting point. This was actually what he brought to me. He's 56 years old. Job is eliminated by downsizing. His portfolio has $585,000 in investments now. His goal is to replace his income with dividends. His current idea is 100% into QQQI. Now his current income is $65,000 a year. So the real decision is not what fund to select. It is the cash flow architect that we need to figure out. At 56, the danger is not just a bad market. It's needing income at the exact moment the portfolio is under pressure. So that job loss, early retirement bridge is that basically is that risk, that consequential risk that we got to deal with. So why 100% in QQQI feels so tempting? Well, if you watch enough videos about QQQI, we've talked about it here on the channel numerous times, is it's paying out such a great yield. And as I've always said, I don't chase yield. The total return numbers even support that yield. So everything on the surface looks great. And if you take $585,000 into the current yield that's coming in now at 14, a little over 14%, you would basically be getting $82,000 before taxes. Well, that's like for him, almost a $15,000 increase in income. So it looks like a paycheck, but the concentration in the one strategy and one index family and one income engine is very risque. Okay, what the yield doesn't show is that single fund risk. Even though it's in an index, a NASDAQ 100 index, there is still huge risk of being only in one family. The NASDAQ 100 concentration is going to create some risk. The distribution volatility. And there's no cash buffer. If anything goes wrong, you are eating into your portfolio, and you have 585. That's about what you're going to have. We already show that QQQI does not really have a big growth factor. It has enough growth factor to cover inflation and that side of it, but the down times and up times is you have nothing growing your fund. So the risk is not that QQQI is bad. I want to make sure everyone understands that. I'm not saying QQQI is bad. I'm not saying NEOS is bad. I just don't like the strategy that he came into, that 100% into one ETF means the same asset has to be your paycheck, your emergency fund, and your long-term growth engine. That's too much pressure on one ticker across the board. I explained to him the bucket system separates those jobs. Your foundation protects you from the next withdrawals. Your income funds generate your paycheck, and your growth funds fight inflation and time. This is why the three bucket system was ever come about and why it was designed like it was, is that each job and each bucket has its own job to do what it needs to do. So we're not saying jump everything in the income, and we've talked about this before. We don't put everything all in the income and just walk away from it. We have to spread the risk out over the three different buckets. So the three different buckets, as I explained to him, was one is the foundation bucket, and that's where your cash, your bonds, it kind of protects that 12 to 24 month of withdrawals. Your income bucket is where your monthly ETFs, your income comes across to live off of. Now, I always put this as, multiple different funds. Now, I know I have a lot of NEOS in this because this is one thing he definitely loves was NEOS, but I did put some things in there. But we also have a third bucket, which is for growth. It's the future growth and inflation protection of his particular fund. So what we're trying to do is make it so he does not have to sell off any funds in case of emergency. We don't have to do anything. Avoid selling growth assets at the wrong time just to pay monthly bills. So this illustration that I gave them, I took his $585,000 and I broke it down into three different funds: the foundation, the growth, and the income. Now I used a across the board 20% foundation, 20% growth, and a 60% income. Now I could increase these numbers. We can change these numbers around. We kind of put it into a spreadsheet for him so he can play around with the numbers accordingly. But with the 585, it's spread out properly in the foundation, the income, and the growth. We basically have a $351,000 income portfolio to work from, $117,000 in the foundation, $117,000 in growth. So why did I do this kind of a split? At the age of 56, he needs income now, but he also needs enough reserves to avoid panic selling and enough growth to avoid running out of purchasing power later. So if he requires an annual spending is too high for his framework, the answer is not automatically more yield. It's more of maybe a part-time income, expense cuts, or delaying full-time retirement. So this is another avenue that we talked about after I laid this all out to him. At the final part here is I told him, I says, if you're going to need more income, because he did not have is dialed into exactly how much he spends. Because there is a cost of going to work every day. There is a cost of from clothes, lunches, driving the car, doing all these things that need to be done to go to work day in, day out. I said, you need to start analyzing what you actually pay, what your cost of living is going to be, so we can get a better factor to this. But I said, if you're going to annual spending is too high, then what this type of portfolio will do. The answer is not let's find more yield, let's find a higher paying fund. What it is, you may have to have more income, such as a part-time job. Take a look at your expenses. We have to cut your expenses, and we may have to delay your full-time retirement. Now, there is one bigger thing that we did not talk about yet, that all his money is in his 401k. So let me break down the buckets as I did for him. So right now, putting 20% of your portfolio into the foundation bucket, this is going to be cash, money markets, treasury bills, short-term bonds, and core bonded funds. The reason for this is the primary job is to protect you for the next 12 to 24 months. You want to bridge that job loss period. You want to avoid selling income funds during stressful times. And you want to fund taxes, emergencies, healthcare gap, which is a whole nother avenue that we had to talk about. And by the time and before Social Security kicks in, he has to have these things dialed in and set up. So this bucket reduces the chances of that temporary downtime or downturn because of a permanent mistake that he makes going into this. Now, bucket two was the bucket that he immediately looked at because he's trying to replace his paycheck. Now, he wasn't real excited because I cut his thing down so much. But I basically told him, I said, I'm going to give it to you simply and do it this way. $351,000, we're going to split it equally between all the funds. I showed him the NASDAQ 100. He already had the JEPQ in his particular fund. I showed him the SPYI, which he already had, and the IWMI, the Russell 2000. Now, I explained to him for this. We broke this down into a NASDAQ 100, an S&P 500, and a Russell 2000. Now, the overlap of these funds, each one stands independently, but the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500 have a lot of shared funds together. And it's a unique piece where the S&P 500 has 500 different companies, while NASDAQ only has 100. While Russell has 2,000, which shares some of the stuff S&P 500 has, maybe even what QQQI has. So there's just a lot of overlap in these things, but I feel that these sectors work the best for most retirees. So we put the yields across the side, and I said we can make a lot of different adjustments in funds, but I'm trying to keep it simple for what you already have in your portfolio. So we're looking at 14% yield, JPQ around that 10.69, 11% on SPYI, and 14% on IWMI. So we're trying to get a nice balance across the board. Now the bucket math came into this. That whole blended bucket package came into a 12.8% distribution rate. So with the money going into it, basically what he was going to get is $44,884 a year from his income bucket. Now, we know his income was $65,000, so this is going to leave him about $11,000, between $10,000 and $11,000 short, and that's going to be before taxes, which is $65,000 would be before taxes. So he was concerned that he doesn't have enough money, and he said, "I'll let you keep talking." He says, "But I think we need to find more, more yield. I need to put more into QQI because of that 14%." And so I said, well, this is the discipline. You use the income bucket that distributes the plan of spending. It keeps the foundation bucket intact unless you need anything special. You reinvest most of the growth bucket for distributions, and you rebalance annually or when the bucket gets too large or too small. If spending needs are set... Morning. So 100% into QQQI versus the 3-bucket system. Well, the projected annual cash flow before taxes, his 100% of QQQI definitely is going to win because you're putting the whole $500,000+ into the fund to get $82,000. But using the 3-bucket system targets about $50,000 of income. But it also takes care of a lot of other pieces as of growth and some protection along the way. So all in, QQQI shows more income today, but the 3-bucket plan shows less headline income, but it also has the cash, the bonds, the multiple income engines, and the growth reserve. So in retirement tests, can you pay? Can you protect? Can it grow? Can you sleep at night? These are the things that we always say in a retirement test. Ask these questions very clearly, and I'll say it one more time. Can it pay you? Can your income bucket pay you to live comfortably? Can it protect you? If you run into a snag, problem, something, do you have money to fall back onto? Can it grow? Can you replace any downsides or any flows of a package, and then can you sleep at night not worrying about your money? These are the things I threw at him while we went through this, showing him that, yeah, his system is going to generate more money, but I don't think you're going to sleep at night. You're definitely not going to grow, and you have no protection because you have all the money put out into the funds. So we never even got into the third bucket, and he doesn't have anything, and this is the growth bucket. Now, the two that I really enjoy is VUG, the Vanguard Growth Fund, and the Overlay OVL. Both of these are large cap growth funds. They use different pieces to generate growth and some income across the board. But this is all about reinvesting bucket whenever possible. You take whatever money this generates, if it generates income, you reinvest it back in to continue to grow this bucket bigger and bigger. And as this grows, everything that this has pours over that limit that we gave it, pours into the income bucket so you can generate even more income down the road. The growth bucket is part of the plan that says, I'm not just trying to survive the next 12 months. I'm trying to protect myself for the next 30 years. Once I explained this to him, he started getting the idea saying, I'm understanding what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it. So the age problem kicks into this. At 56, technically you're not ready for your 401k, your IRAs to touch without penalty. Now, before anyone jumps in and puts comments down below, I'm going to say it right now. There are rules out there. There are rules if your job gets lost. You can dip into your 401ks and your IRAs and do exactly what he's trying to do without penalty. But I also put to him and said, look, you're at 56, waiting to get to 59. Okay? Let's work accordingly to get you to 59.5 before we have to really deal with penalty changes. And then you have 6 more years before you get to Social Security, which will change your whole structure. So realistically with him, we're talking about a 5 to 6 year plan to get to 62, and then we're going to rechange everything again. So before he changes the portfolio, he should answer the following question. Is the money in the taxable account or an IRA or a former employee 401k? His is in the 401k, so we had to talk about that. Can he access the money without that penalty? Well, there is a clarity, and I gave that to him doing the research, and I'm telling him to talk to the CPA or tax advisor that can help him with that answer alone. And does the former employee plan allow that rule of 55 for withdrawals, which is what I was talking about? That's what the rule is called. Would a 72 schedule create too much rigidity? Now, these are all the things that a CPA is going to answer for him, and if he can move it to the right account, how he wants to move it, how to structure it tax burden wise. And the simplest thing, if he takes this, moves it to a Fidelity account and works accordingly, he may be able to withdraw the money and build it the way he wants versus something that the company doesn't offer, like the funds we talked about. So 56 is the big problem. And some of the answers here, he has to get back with me on. I know the rule of 55 with the withdrawals. He'll probably qualify for that with no problem, but that will burden him from doing another job to get him to that 5 or 6 year plan to get him to Social Security. So we'll be talking more about this, but I did actually feel that we stopped him from making a huge mistake of going all in on QQQI. Now, the tax handling, never guess. Don't just guess at this. You have to understand your tax positioning, your tax awareness, and so on. The funds I gave him in the NEOS package, we know are very, very solid tax programs. We talk about this all the time, 1256 contracts. We talk about the return of capital, the tax harvesting. So NEOS has a great tax program built into their ETFs. JEPQ on the other side that he already owns, it makes monthly income using the equity portfolio plus the NASDAQ call options, and the taxes are handled in a weird, different way, more likely ordinary income. So we got to deal with that side of it. And then the 401k tax plans, again, He's got to work with a tax advisor to get this done. So I always tell him, don't guess. Don't guess with what's going on. The first two I can answer, the rest of it he has to pump through. So the rules of using the system. What you want to do is set a paycheck. Define your monthly spending before you choose the yield. You can't do nothing until you know how much money you're spending and dial into it. You need to protect your runaway. Keep 12 to 24 months in the foundation before chasing income. Diversify your income. No single ETF I truly believe in. And then reinvest your growth. And then review it. I actually told them you're going to start reviewing this probably every 90 days, every 6 months, and then every year. Then you're going to kick off the every 90 days to go to every 6 months and then every year. And once you got this thing rolling, you're going to be into just a yearly review. The goal is not the maximum yield. If the goal is that durable long-term paycheck from your income. So what would I tell him? And what did I go through with? QQQI can be a part of your retirement paycheck, but I would not make the entire retirement check all QQQI. I would build the plan in this order. Confirm your monthly spending, confirm your account type with withdrawal rates, find out how much money you can actually get and work with, build that foundation bucket, build that diversity bucket, and then keep a real goal of growth bucket moving forward. And I think you're going to solve yourself. I know you're in a panic right now of losing a job. I already told them you may have to go back and go work a part-time job. And I gave him some suggestions. I know people don't like to hear this side of the stuff, but you may have to go to, maybe a Lowe's or Home Depot. Maybe there's other jobs, sideline jobs you can do. There's delivery type stuff just to help cruise the burden between what's going on. I know you don't want to start another career at 56. You'd love to retire, but it's all about planning. Once you have a plan in place, things will go forward. Let me know what you will have told him. Leave your comments down below. I would love to hear what you would tell him at a 56-year-old in the dilemma that he's not at 59 and a half to get his money out of his 401ks, and he doesn't really want to start another job. So what would you tell him across the board? I'd just like to see if I'm on the same page as my viewers. Final takeaway, I just think the 3-bucket plan is a much better plan than an all-in plan. Because if you pick the wrong one, you're screwed. With a 3-bucket plan, it works the best way. The growth, the income, the foundation. Guys, let me know what your thoughts are down below. I'd love to hear from you. I will catch you on the next video. Thank you for watching.